Adapted from archaic translation by H. T. Francis and R. A. Neal. Jataka number 373. Musica Jataka. People cry where is she gone, etc. This story the master, while residing in the bamboo grove, told about Ajatashatru. The incident that led to the story has been already fully told in the Tusa birth. Here too the master observed the king at the same moment playing with his boy and also listening to the righteous path. And knowing as he did that danger to the king will arise through his son. He said, "Sire, kings of old suspected what was open to suspicion, and kept their heirs in confinement, saying, 'Let him bear rule, after our bodies have been burned on the funeral pyre.'" And with this he told a story of the past. Once upon a time in the reign of Brahmadatta, king of Benares, the Bodhisattva was born in a Brahmin family, and became a world-famed teacher. The son of the king of Benares, Prince Yava, by name, after applying himself diligently to acquire all the liberal arts from him, being now anxious to depart, told him goodbye. The teacher, knowing by his power of divination that danger would happen to the prince through his son, considered how he might remove this danger from him, and began to look about him for a likely example. Now he had a horse at this time, and a wound appeared on its foot. And in order to give proper attention to the wound the horse was kept to the stable. Now close by was a well. And a mouse used to venture out of its hole and nibble the wound on the horse's foot. The horse could not stop it, and one day being unable to bear the pain, when the mouse came to bite him, he struck it dead with his hoof and kicked it into the well. The grooms not seeing the mouse said, "On other days the mouse came and bit the wound, but now it is not to be seen. What has become of it?" The Bodhisattva saw the whole thing and said, "Others from not knowing ask, where is the mouse? But I alone know that the mouse has been killed by the horse, and dropped into the well." And making this very fact an example, he composed the first stanza and gave it to the young prince. Looking about for another example, he saw that same horse, when the boil was healed, go out and make his way to a barley field to get some barley to eat, and thrust his head through a hole in the fence, and taking this as an example he composed a second stanza and gave it to the prince. But the third stanza he composed by his own wit and gave this also to him. And B said, "My friend, when you are established in the kingdom, as you go in the evening to the bathing tank, walk as far as the front of the staircase, repeating the first stanza. And as you enter the palace in which you dwell, walk to the foot of the stairs, repeating the second stanza, and as you go from there to the top of the stairs, repeat the third stanza." And with these words he dismissed him. The young prince returned home and acted as viceroy, and on his father's death he became king. An only son was born to him, and when he was 16 years old he was eager to be king. And being thought to kill his father, he said to his patrons, "My father is still young. When I come to look upon his funeral pyre I shall be a worn-out old man. What good will it be for me to come to the throne then?" "My lord," they said, "it is out of the question for you to go to the frontier and play the rebel. You must find some way or other to kill your father, and to seize upon his kingdom." He readily agreed, and went in the evening, and took his sword and stood in the king's palace near the bathing tank, prepared to kill his father. The king in the evening sent a female slave called Musica, saying, "Go and cleanse the surface of the tank. I shall take a bath." She went there, and while she was cleaning the bath she caught sight of the prince. Fearing that what he was about might be revealed, he cut her in two with his sword and threw the body into the tank. The king came to bathe. Everybody said, "Today the slave Musica does not return. Where is she gone?" The king went to the edge of the tank, repeating the first stanza. People cry, "Where is she gone?" Musica, where have you fled? This is known to me alone. In the well she lies dead. Thought the prince, my father has found out what I have done. And being panic-stricken he fled and told everything to his attendants. After the lapse of 7 or 8 days, they again addressed him and said, "My lord, if the king knew he would not be silent. What he said must have been a mere guess. Put him to death." So one day he stood sword in hand at the foot of the stairs, and when the king came he was looking about for an opportunity to strike him. The king came repeating the second stanza. Like a beast of burden still. You do turn and turn about. You that Musica did kill. Gladly would Yava eat, I doubt. Thought the prince, my father has seen me, and fled in terror. But at the end of a fortnight he thought, I will kill the king by a blow from a shovel. So he took a spoon-shaped instrument with a long handle and stood poising it. The king climbed to the top of the stair, repeating the third stanza. You are but a weakling fool. Like a baby with its toy. Grasping this long spoon-like tool. I will kill you, miserable boy. That day being unable to escape, he grovelled at the king's feet and said, Sire, spare my life. The king after berating him had him bound in chains and was thrown into prison. And sitting on a magnificent royal seat shaded by a white umbrella, he said, Our teacher, a far-famed Brahmin foresaw this danger to us, and gave us these 3 stanzas. And being highly delighted, in the intensity of his joy he gave on the rest of the verses. I am not free by living in the sky. Nor by some act of family piety. No, when my life was wanted by this my son. Escape from death through power of verse was won. Knowledge of every kind he is likely to learn. And what it all may signify discern. Though you should use it not, the time will be when what you hear may advantage you. In due course of time on the death of the king the young prince was established on the throne. The master here brought his lesson to a close, and identified the birth. At that time the far-famed teacher was myself. Source. Adapted from archaic translation by H. T. Francis and R. A. Neal. Jataka number 374. Khuddhaka Jataka. Since you have gained, etc. This story was told by the master while living at Jetavana monastery, about the temptation of a brother by the wife of his unregenerate days. When the brother confessed that it was owing to the wife that he had left, that he regretted having taken to holy order of disciples, the master said, Not now only, brother, did this woman do you a mischief. Formerly too it was owing to her that your head was cut off. And at the request of the brethren he told a story of the past. Once upon a time in the reign of Brahmadatta, king of Benares, the bodhisattva was reborn as Sakka. At that time a certain young Brahmin of Benares acquired all the liberal arts at Taxila, and having attained to proficiency in archery, he was known as the clever little archer. Then his master thought, This youth has acquired skill equal to my own, and he gave him his daughter to wife. He took her and wishing to return to Benares he set out on the road. Halfway on his journey, an elephant laid waste a certain place, and no man dared to ascend to that spot. The clever little archer, though the people tried to stop him, took his wife and climbed up to the entrance of the forest. Then when he was in the midst of the wood, the elephant rose up to attack him. The archer wounded him in the forehead with an arrow, which piercing him through and through came out at the back of his head, and the elephant fell down dead on the spot. The clever archer, after making this place secure, went on further to another wood. And there 50 robbers were infesting the road. Up to this spot too, though men tried to stop him, he climbed till he found the regular place, where the robbers killed the deer and roasted and ate the venison, close to the road. The robbers, seeing him approach with his brightly colored dressed wife, made a great effort to capture him. The robber chief, being skilled in reading a man's character, just gave one look at him, and recognizing him as a distinguished hero, did not allow them to rise up against him, though he was single-handed. The clever archer sent his wife to these robbers, saying, "Go and ask them to give us a skewer of meat, and bring it to me." So she went and said, "Give me a skewer of meat." The robber chief said, "He is a noble fellow," and told them to give it her. The robbers said, "What? Is he to eat our roast meat?" And they gave her a piece of raw meat. The archer, having a good opinion of himself, was angry with the robbers for offering him raw meat. The robbers said, "What? Is he the only man, and are we merely women?" And thus threatening him, they rose up against him. The archer wounded and struck to the ground 50 robbers except one with the same number of arrows. He had no arrow left to wound the robber chief. There had been full 50 arrows in his arrow case. With one of them he had wounded the elephant, and with the rest the 50 robbers except one. So he knocked down the robber chief, and sitting on his chest asked his wife to bring him his sword in her hand to cut off his head. At that very moment she conceived a passion for the robber chief and placed the hilt of the sword in his hand and the sheath in that of her husband. The robber, grasping the hilt, brought out the sword, and cut off the head of the archer. After killing her husband he took the woman with him, and as they journeyed together he inquired of her origin. "I am the daughter," she said, "of a world-famed teacher at Taxila." "How did he get you for his wife?" He said. "My father," she said, "was so pleased at his having acquired from him an heir equal to his own, that he gave me to him to wife. And because I fell in love with you, I let you kill my lawful husband." Thought the robber chief, "This woman now has killed her lawful husband. As soon as she sees some other man, she will treat me too after the same sort. I must get rid of her." And as he went on his way, he saw their path cut off by what was usually a poor little shallow stream, but which was now flooded, and he said, "My dear, there is a savage crocodile in this river. What are we to do?" "My lord," she said, "take all the ornaments I wear, and make them into a bundle in your upper robe, and carry them to the further side of the river, and then come back and take me across." "Very well," he said, and took all her adornments, and going down to the stream, like one in great haste, he gained the other bank, and left her and fled. On seeing this she cried, "My lord, you go as if you were leaving me. Why do you do this? Come back and take me with you." And addressing him she uttered the first stanza. "Since you have gained the other side, with all my goods in bundle tied, return as quickly as may be, and carry me across with you." The robber, on hearing her, as he stood on the further bank, repeated the second stanza. "Your fancy, lady, ever roves, from well-tried faith to lighter loves. Me too you would before long betray, should I not hence flee far away." But when the robber said, "I will go further hence," "You stop where you are," she screamed aloud, and he fled with all her adornments. Such was the fate that overtook the poor fool through excess of passion. And being quite helpless she came near to a clump of cassia plants and sat there weeping. At that moment Sakka, looking down upon the world, saw her overcome with desire and weeping for the loss of both husband and lover. And thinking he would go and rebuke her and put her to shame, he took with him matali and pancasikha, and went and stood on the bank of the river and said, "Matali, do you become a fish? Pancasikha, you change into a bird, and I will become a jackal." and taking a piece of meat in my mouth, I will go and place myself in front of this woman. And when you see me there, you, matali, are to leap up out of the water, and fall before me. And when I shall drop the piece of meat I have taken in my mouth, and shall spring up to seize the fish, at that moment, you, pancasikha, are to pounce upon the piece of meat, and to fly up into the air, and you, matali, are to fall into the water. Thus did Sakka instruct them. And they said, Good, my lord. Matali was changed into a fish, pancasikha into a bird, and Sakka became a jackal. And taking a piece of meat in his mouth, he went and placed himself in front of the woman. The fish leaping up out of the water fell before the jackal. The jackal, dropping the piece of meat he held in his mouth, sprang up to catch the fish. The fish jumped up and fell into the water, and the bird seized the piece of meat and flew up into the air. The jackal thus lost both fish and meat and sat sulkily looking towards the clump of cassia. The woman, seeing this, said, Through being too greedy, he got neither flesh nor fish, and, as if she saw the point of the trick, she laughed heartily. The jackal, on hearing this, uttered the third stanza. Who makes the cassia vegetation ring? With laughter, though none dance or sing, or clap their hands, good time to keep? Fair one, laugh not, when you should weep. On hearing this, she repeated the fourth stanza. O silly jackal, you must wish. You have not lost both flesh and fish. Poor fool! Well may you grieve to see what comes of your stupidity. Then the jackal repeated the fifth stanza. Another's faults are plainly seen. It is hard to see one's own, I think. I think you too must count the cost, when spouse and lover both are lost. On hearing his words she spoke this stanza. King Jackal, it is just as you say. So I will move me far away, and seek another wedded love, and work hard, a faithful wife to prove. Then Sakka, King of Heaven, hearing the words of this vicious and unchaste woman, repeated the final stanza. He that would steal a pot of clay, would steal a brass one any day. So she who was her husband's weakness, will be as bad or worse again. Thus did Sakka put her to shame and brought her to repent, and then returned to his own dwelling. The master here ended his lesson and revealed the truths, and identified the birth. At the conclusion of the truths, the backsliding brother attained the fruit of the first path. At that time the backsliding brother was the archer, the wife he had left was that woman, and I myself was Sakka, King of Heaven.